As the big 3-0 had approached, Hayley knew she needed to make a change. She took an exit off the freeway and the landscape began to change dramatically. As she followed the winding Hawkesbury River, towns gave way to open pasture and livestock. Horses and cattle grazed lazily in their green, grassy paddocks. Already she felt 1,000,000 miles away from the city. Okay, so as far as grand adventures went, moving approximately 2.5 hours away wasn't such a huge deal. But Lockway and Sydney couldn't be more different. Lockway was a small village in a valley established around the time of the first settlers. It had once been a bustling town and a vital agricultural centre, being so close to the newly established Sydney settlement and easily accessed via the river. However, after the railway had opened the Great Dividing Range to the rapidly expanding settlement, development had ceased, and the valley had been all but abandoned. It was later dubbed the Forgotten Valley. Over recent years, however, it had undergone a resurgence in popularity, with an influx of city dwellers restoring the old buildings and turning them into B&Bs and boutique accommodation. For the most part, Lockway itself had avoided the gentrification of its neighbouring villages, dominated as it was by farms that had been owned by generations of the same families. Hayley had first discovered the area when she'd been invited to the Writers' Festival in nearby St Albans a few years previously. She'd been so captivated by the history and sheer beauty of the region that she'd brought Paul back a few months later. They'd stayed in a convict-built stone farmhouse in Lockway. She'd been racing to meet a deadline and had tried to combine their getaway with writing, which hadn't gone down terribly well with Paul and, looking back, had been the turning point in their marriage. It had been shortly after getting home from the trip that Paul and Lisa had started their affair. The book she'd been writing then had coincidentally been released just prior to her 30th birthday a few months ago and had set off an avalanche of emotions. She felt a need to escape, to start over someplace, and remembered the solitude Lockway and its surrounds had offered. Hayley spontaneously searched real estate listings online and purely by chance discovered the little stone farmhouse in Lockway was listed for sale. That was 8 weeks ago. She hadn't told anyone she'd bought it without having made a trip out to view it again after staying there. It sounded crazy. And maybe it was. She didn't know anyone. All she knew was she needed a change, and this was it. Beside her on the passenger seat was a manila envelope with copies of the paperwork she'd signed last week and various other bits and pieces from the real estate agent. It was really happening. A little bubble of excitement rippled through her. This was her new beginning. "You have reached your destination," the ever-serene voice of her GPS informed her at the same time as she spotted the number on the letterbox. Thick bush blocked the house and the rest of the property from view, making it completely private. The 500 metres of driveway wound its way through the bushland till it broke out into a clearing to reveal a beautiful sandstone cottage with a bull-nosed veranda behind a white timber fence. Hayley parked her car outside. A colour-bond shed in the same shade of sandstone had been built a few metres from the house and would provide storage for anything she couldn't fit inside, as it was considerably smaller than her old one. But what the cottage lacked in size, it more than made up for in character. Hayley loved everything about the cosy place. The gardens had been painstakingly designed and meticulously cared for. The rear veranda had the most gorgeous view over a rose garden and an arbour covered in wisteria. The plump purple flowers hung in clusters, and the gentle drone of bees happily buzzing about them filled Hayley with memories of lazy summer days and warm sunshine. Beyond the arbour hedges on 3 sides created a courtyard feel to the garden. Hayley walked towards the small gate in the far back corner of the hedge. She hadn't ventured this far when she and Paul had stayed here. She knew from the contract that there was a small overseer's cottage and some sheds out here, but previously